unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity. And today's conversation might change the way you think about your home. What if the spaces you lived in are really quietly shaping your energy, your relationships, even your whole sense of purpose every day? So whether you own or rent, this episode might show you how to put some of that mind-body connection into a mind-body environment connection to work for you. My guest is Talor Stewart. Talor, welcome to the show.
RK, thank you very much. And what a great introduction. You really hit the nail on the head. It's about the mind-body environment connection, because it really touches on this sort of feedback loop that we get. We have our own inner game, but the outside world is also mirroring back so much to us. And we're spending so much time in our homes, particularly, that it really makes sense to understand how that works. It's just an essential life skill.
Talor is the author of a best-selling book called Conscious Home Design. Talor, as we get started here, you reference in the book research on happiness. You're thinking about home design, and all of a sudden there's research on happiness from Harvard. How does it connect that the home that we're surrounded in is actually influencing our overall happiness?
Sure. I wrote the book Conscious Home Design, and that came out of my practice. It went all the way back to my days in college studying to be an architect. And I saw that while a lot of projects that were being built were very intentional, I also felt they were at the same time unconscious and more focused on the style or the building and less about the individuals, that are going to be using the space. And so to me, it was like, this was unconscious design. And it took me 20 years to write the book. It took me 20 years of practice to really condense the message into something that everyone could understand and be very coherent and not be opinion based. Oh, I like red, I like blue, but something that would be more universal for people. So as I was researching for more science-based data that I could draw upon to inform design decisions, I came across the Harvard study of adult happiness, which is the largest study of its kind. It's been going on since 1938 and it's still going on today. So it's 88 years going on. And so they've studied thousands of individuals and they're on to second and third generations now. And what they found is that they tracked these individuals through their whole life. What's their background? Did they come from opportunity? Did they come from difficulties? What were their health like? What was their career trajectory looking like? And they found that as people went through life and navigated the ups and downs, whether they had business success or failures, whether they had health challenges, whether they lived in a fancy house or a very modest house, they found that all these things make a difference on our happiness. But the thing that made the biggest impact, the single biggest predictor of people's happiness and their actual life expectancy, right? So their longevity, statistically, was tied to the quality of their relationships and their connections with other people. And I really, when I came across this study, I said, well, okay, stop the presses. We've got to camp out here and dig in a little bit more, because they're saying this is the single biggest predictor of people's happiness and life expectancy. The highest goal of architecture is to help facilitate human life, human endeavors, human creativity, human possibility, right? We want people to live up to their potential or keep as many doors of possibility open for them to live happily ever after. Just like it was written into the founding fathers of America wrote in the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? It's fundamental, inalienable, self-evident. We recognize this is a right of existence. And so architecture has to facilitate that. So I said, okay, if relationships are the big factor here, how can we design spaces to encourage relationships or to facilitate relationships? And that really began a lot of thought adjustment,
Yes.
to consider that.
Let's go down on that a little bit more because as I was going through the book, one of the exercises right up front is to think about three different types of relationships that you're
Uh-huh.
describing as well-being. Let's break those down a little bit, especially as it
Sure.
relates to, you had a nice term, the bones of our homes. How can they support these relationships? What are the three, and how does
Thanks,
your
Mark.
home
Yeah. Yeah.
underscore that?
Nice to touch on that and go a little deeper. I think people will really enjoy this and find it interesting. This is as I went into this idea of relationships, because the Harvard study was very clear. They said relationships is not limited to your romantic partnerships. It certainly includes a romantic relationship, but it's not limited to that. So if you happen to be single, that doesn't say you can't live a long, happy life. So I started to look at all the different types of relationships that are out there that are possible. The Greeks have 7 different words for love, depending on how it shows up, whether it's between two friends, whether it's between two lovers, whether it's between a parent and a child, or between a person and an individual in their community, all different eros and filial and agape and storge and et cetera, et cetera. And that's interesting, but I wanted to go deeper. And so as I pursued all these different kinds of relationships and all their different forms, I found that they really come down to 3 broad categories, and those are our giving, our receiving, and our reciprocal relationships. And so giving relationships are those where we show up as the primary giver. At the first face of the relationship, one person appears to be giving to the other. And those are relationships where we maybe are teaching someone or coaching or mentoring, if we're parenting or babysitting or raising children in some way. Giving relationships would also extend to plants and animals, whether we have pets or even a bird feeder outside. That's a giving relationship that we've initiated. And receiving relationships are the opposite of that. They're the ones where we are the primary beneficiary of someone else's care and love and wisdom. So relationships that we have with our coaches, elders, and parents, teachers, mentors, even heroes or spiritual figures. Anyone that's going to encourage us to stretch or reach just a little bit more into our possibility and potential. And then reciprocal relationships are ones like you and I are having right now, where colleagues, friends, peers, coworkers, anyone where there's showing up on equal footing, and there's a give and take, and it's a different kind of relationship where I might have a little bit more a facade, a persona of on my best behavior because I'm role modeling. If I was in a giving relationship, perhaps if I was teaching or parenting, I'd have to be on my best behavior. Or if I was showing up in a receiving relationship where I'm receiving from wisdom or knowledge, I would show up maybe a little bit more, I don't know, respectful, a little bit more honoring. And whereas a reciprocal relationship, you can just be yourself, let your hair down and speak from the heart. And so all 3 kinds of relationship have their own quality. And as we move through life, we're going to have different amounts of each one. If you think back to college days, it's like lots of receiving relationships, and any free time you get, you're hanging out with your friends. Lots of reciprocal relationships, but there's not much giving relationships for most people in that phase of life. But soon after, most people settle down and start a family, and they have kids, and now it's giving 24/7, it feels like, for years. And so as we move through life, there'll be ebbs and flows. But to be a well-rounded person, to feel like, yes, I have a rich life, you want to have a healthy mix, a healthy balance of all 3 kinds. And of
So
course, what
good.
that looks like is individual, right? Everyone has to choose for themselves what a healthy balance is, but that the concept is all 3 kinds. And so for my purposes as an architect, by qualifying the relationships, identifying these 3 categories, I could then say, all right, because to just blindly say, let's build for relationships, that's just too vague. It's not specific enough to actually end up with measurable or targeted action steps with measurable results. And as wanting to be creative, but also scientific, not just whimsy, but also goal-oriented.
Yeah, very helpful.
I needed to be able to create a methodology or a system.
Yes. You're really piquing my curiosity about another, it's not a kind of relationship, but you think of working at home now. So the home was never really meant to be your office. But
so
now
much.
it's certainly that secondary purpose. What kind
Almost.
of implication does working from home have now in building, literally building, but also in creating your home?
That's going to be an individual, an individual data point. Not everyone is going to work from home. There are a lot of people that are in service-based industries that do their work elbow to elbow. They have to be there with you, working on their thing, or whether they're with you, whether they're working in human fields but they might be working in technical fields or construction fields where they have to go and actually work on the water heater.
That's right.
And a lot of people are going back to work now too for the connection, and you can get things done. You change your environment. And so that's one of the biggest things I look at for the people that are wanting to work from home. The questions are how much and what does that mean for you? Because you want to have a size appropriate space, and you also want to have it in a location that allows you to have the separation that you might need from what else is going on in the house. If you're there alone, no problem. But if you're there with other people, maybe you need some not just sound privacy but also just to be able to concentrate on what you're doing, be able to get some deep work time, focus in, and not be distracted by things. It's just saying, what are your personal needs for working from home, and then helping shape the space that's going to support you, that's going to help you achieve success there. I love to get into flow state. If I can create an environment that helps me flow, then I can get twice as much done in half the time, right? So it's not so much about, this is one of the beauties of working from home, is that if you can achieve flow state, you can be extremely productive and save the commute time, and you can get the same amount of work done in less amount of time. And so it gives you a little bit of time freedom. However, if you don't have that flow state and you're not there and you're struggling to get to be productive, then having a well-shaped environment is going to really support you. Because if you're struggling and fighting against the environment, as well as fighting against your own self and your own work challenges and that kind of thing, that's very hard. And so it's even harder. So when we can create the supportive environment, it's going to give us a lift and help us be more productive on the days where things aren't flowing and you just have to grind it out.
Yeah.
Type of thing. You know what I mean?
Very helpful. Another one of those environmental factors I was glad to read about in the book was sun and sunlight.
Oh, yeah.
And its influence on, I guess, your mood, of course, but motivation and even the daily behavior. And you called it the sunny window effect. How do you not only literally, but figuratively build in the sun into your home design?
So when I was a kid, I remember noticing that the family pet, whether it was the dog or the cat, when the sun was coming into the window and there was a sunny patch on the floor, that's where
They'd always find that.
They'd always be curled up hanging out in the sun patch. And if I was sitting there reading a book or doing my homework or playing a game, whatever I was doing, I might notice nice and sunny, and then a cloud would roll by and suddenly the room would dim, and then the cloud would pass, and then the sun would illuminate the room again. And I could just see that contrast, the difference between illuminated and shaded. And no matter how beautifully decorated your space is, it's that much more welcoming when the sun is streaming in. We're drawn to the light. Light is life. It's instinctual for us. And so I find that if we have set goals for ourselves to maintain a routine or to create a new habit, a new activity that we have a New Year's resolution. Oh, I wanted to do this thing. I want to make sure I'm doing it and stay on this plan that I've set for myself. One of the things we can do to support ourselves is make sure, if possible, that we're doing that activity in a room at a time of day, in a room that has a sunny window. And that's a way that we can put the environment to work for ourselves. We're talking about the work from home crowd. I was speaking with someone recently who has a home office and doesn't use it. And after I was walking him through my process, he realized, it's because it's on the north side of the house and it has a window, but there's no sunlight. And I find myself, I'm always working in this other room because it's sunny. And I said, of course, instinctually, you don't, it's subconscious. You're just automatically doing it. And if you can find a room with sun to do your activity, see if that's going to work for you. See if that can help you support your flow. And of course, when I'm designing a new home for someone, there's lots of things that I like to do as I discover who a person is, walking them through the sort of onboarding process of what activities they want to do, what makes their home uniquely them, and shaping it. So as we look at their routines, we can set things up to where they're in the right locations in the house. Just having X many bedrooms and the right kind of rooms, that's part of it. But they also need to be well arranged so that they work for your actual lifestyle flow. So one of the things I like to do is put the kitchen, for example, in the southeast corner because it gets morning sun. And, grandma always told me that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And if the kitchen is nice and bright and sunny and welcoming in the morning, then that's going to encourage us to spend a few minutes and make a more nutritious breakfast for ourselves rather than just toast and coffee. And that's going to serve us very well over years with having an extra nutritional boost in the morning.
Yeah, so good. My guest is Talor Stewart. He is architect and author of Conscious Home Design. Talor, before we get much further, first I want to ask you some questions about the creative space, but I want to make sure people know where to find you and connect with you and learn more about your work.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, conscioushomedesign.com is my website. There's a contact me form if anyone wants to pick my brain. I do projects all over the country, coast to coast, top to bottom. And you can pick up a copy of my book there and the workbook, the companion that goes with it, it's really about the big idea. It's very accessible. You can read it in about an hour. It's not a lot of jargon in there. It's design. I wrote it intentionally for a non-design oriented reader, just to say, hey, here are the secret things that you should know about. And it's not everything. It's not a big volume. When I was looking at, initially, I had a big Google Doc. I was going to write this book about everything under the sun. I said, who wants to read a 42-chapter book about architecture? That sounds so boring. Only architecture students are going to read that. And that was not my intended audience. And so I worked hard. There was Mark Twain wrote a letter to a friend, and he joked around. He said, I would have wrote a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. And so I actually worked with 3 different editors on this book to condense it and get it down to just a very concise message. And once you get that message, then it's, okay, that's amazing. Yes, I totally see it. I'm referencing Harvard and NASA and Georgetown and University of Madrid and all sorts of scientific studies. But the proof is there. But then the next question is, but what would that look like for me? And so I wrote the companion workbook. So you can just do these little exercises and say, oh, okay, great. That's the quality of the question determines the quality of your outcome and results. And so the workbook was about asking you the right questions to pull those good answers out of you, the questions that you might not have thought to even ask yourself. And that's all available at conscioushomedesign.com. Thank you for letting me talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to definitely check it out.
Help people.
Yes.
And even if someone just living in an apartment has no plans to hire an architect, it will shift the way they see things. And that's positively. Yeah.
Yes. I wanted to pick up on that thought and laser in now for our creative audience.
Yes,
you have
sir.
a concept called the creative room, expressing yourself, making room for creativity. And like you said, whether you're in a big house, small apartment, wherever we're living, we need space for creativity. How do if we were starting today, we turn off the podcast, we get back to our day, and we say, I just want to make this small intentional move to make a space for myself and my creativity. Where do we start?
You need to start with what you love. You start with what creative expressions come naturally to you. Somewhere, all of us have a creative spark. Whether that was nurtured or not is outside of ourselves. That's the environment. But now that we are autonomous, we're living on our own, we no longer have to play the piano when what we really wanted to do was paint because our parents put this on us. Or, no, you can't, don't paint. You're going to go be a lawyer, that kind of thing. Maybe creativity was not encouraged. Whatever your circumstances are or were, now you have the opportunity to pursue that creativity on your own. And we know from Maslow's hierarchy of human needs pyramid that humans have a creative expression need. We're not just animals that need, you can give someone shelter, even beautiful shelter, but that's still not enough to thrive. They can survive with that. We can survive with shelter. But to have a well-rounded, rich life, we want to have opportunities for those relationships that we was talking about before, and also personal development needs and self-expression and creativity. So as I'm going through a person's life in their home, through the context of the home, how to support their life, asking the question, what do you like to do for creative expression? Most architects don't ask their clients that. They're not thinking that way. They expect the client to tell them that. And if the client doesn't know that that's something they should communicate, oh, by the way, I really like to do X, Y, Z, or I don't do that, but I used to, and I wish I could do it now, it might get left out. And so someone might spend 7 figures building a new home and then move in and still not have a creative space dedicated. It happens all the time.
I'm sure it does.
Because they don't not asking the right questions. Yeah. So for an individual, whether they're building a new home or they're just, to your sort of example of just someone listening right now and we're hanging up from the podcast and say, okay, what can I do? It's a self-assessment, right? You start with yourself. What do I like to do for creative expression? Is there any creative expression that I can do within the confines of my home, within the walls that I already have to work with? Where's the low-hanging fruit? What can I do? And I think most of the people listening to this show are already aware and in tune of their creative channels and their loves, right? And so that is going to be a fairly easy question for them to ask. But for anyone who's perhaps confused and struggling to find, I don't know, I'm not very creative, or I want to be creative, but they don't feel it. There's clues oftentimes in childhood. Look back to your early years up until, the time, say between 6 and 12 years old, and say, what did you like to do for play and creative stuff back then? What came naturally to you? And see if you can find something and say, oh, that's right. Yes, I used to love to do this, whatever it was, collages or scrapbooking or creative writing or painting, or I used to love doing clay, whatever it is, maybe revisit that. Or not. You could life is like a big buffet. You can just look out there and say, what is there to try? Oh, let me try that one. It's no risk. Just try it. You don't have to commit. You don't have to become a master at this thing. Just try it out. And if you don't like it, do something else. And if you do like it, keep doing it. It's just
Well,
for
you
yourself.
really reminded me. I love music. I love to listen to music. And when we had the stereo, you had to be next to it. When you had the turntable, you had to go there. When I had the CD player, you had to sit next to it. It does seem that now that I carry music wherever I go, it's in the palm of your hand. It's literally everywhere. I find maybe I'm listening to it less, and I'm listening to it less intentionally and less creatively and less for fun, which is background noise. So you're reminding me, maybe I need to recarve out this space where I can sit and listen to music. Focus as the activity, not the background noise.
Yeah.
That'll be my steps.
It's a totally different experience to do it that way. I have actually found that there are some musical pieces that if I have it as background music, it irritates me. I can't listen to it. But if I listen to it as the sole activity where I'm just going to sit there and tune in and listen to the music, I love it. It's the most interesting thing. It's like some pieces are meant to be experienced and engaged with. Others are okay as ambiance. It's just a different experience for sure. I know what you're talking about.
Yes, very good. Talor, can't thank you enough. What a great conversation. It's really stimulated a lot of ideas. I'll be going around the house all day, all week, thinking about how to be more intentional with the environment. My guest is Talor Stewart, and he's developed the conscious home design. It's both a philosophy, a system, a book, a workbook. You've really wrapped your creativity around it, and I really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Mark. I do too. I love, as a creative person myself, it's one of the most fun chances for me is to talk to other creative people and support that drive that we all have.
Yes. And another person, you talk about reciprocal, and another person who actually wants to have the conversation. How many coffees have you had? It's blah, 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 creativity. Okay, let's move on.
There's some people that just don't want to go in there. They don't want
And
to have that conversation.
yeah,
It's dragging a mule uphill. You
yeah,
just,
so
okay,
you're making too much of it.
right.
But folks,
Interesting.
that's what we love on this podcast. We go around the world talking to creative practitioners about how they get inspired, how they organize ideas, and of course, how we gain the confidence and connections to launch our work out into the world. And that's what it's all about. So until next time, I'm Mark Stinson. We're going to keep unlocking your world of creativity.